6 months later, John stood on the bridge of the Voraxian flagship. Through the viewport, he could see the combined human-Voraxian fleet spread out against the stars. More than 50 ships of different sizes and designs, all working together. The Carven fleet has been detected, reported a Voraxian officer. 300 ships approaching from Sector 7. John turned to Kirish, who wore her full battle armor. The bonding ceremony 2 months ago had changed many things. Their personal connection had deepened in ways neither had expected, and the alliance between their peoples, though still new and fragile, had grown stronger each day. "Are you ready?" he asked. Kirish's scales brightened. "Always." John touched the communicator on his wrist. "This is Captain Mason to all ships. Battle positions." The fleet moved with practiced precision. Human ships, faster and more maneuverable, took flanking positions. Voraxian vessels, with their superior armor and weapons, formed the center line. "The Carven didn't expect us to discover their plans so quickly," Olivia said, now serving as John's second-in-command. "Nor did they expect us to join forces," added Alan, who had become an important cultural bridge between the two species. The first Carven ships appeared on their scanners. Dark, angular vessels designed for war. "They're hailing us," Kate reported from her communication station. The main screen activated, showing a Carven commander. Tall and thin, with pale skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. He looked between John and Kirish with obvious surprise. A human and a Voraxian, commanding together. "Impossible." John stepped forward. "Not impossible. We've discovered your deception, Commander. Your attempts to push our species into war have failed." The Carven's upper eyes narrowed. "It changes nothing. Both your primitive species will fall today." The screen went dark. Seconds later, the Carven fleet opened fire. The battle was intense. Carven weapons tore through space, hitting both human and Voraxian ships. But the combined fleet fought with unexpected coordination. Human tactical flexibility, paired with Voraxian power, created a formidable force. John had learned much in 6 months. He now understood Voraxian battle language and could give commands their warriors respected. Kirish had studied human strategy, appreciating its adaptive approach. 3 hours later, the remaining Carven ships retreated. The combined fleet had won, though not without losses. As damage reports came in, John felt Kirish's hand on his shoulder. Her touch, once strange, now brought comfort. "We have proven what I believed from the start," she said. "Our peoples are stronger together than apart." 2 weeks later, John and Kirish stood on a balcony overlooking a massive ceremony hall on Earth. Below them, human and Voraxian leaders signed the official alliance treaty. After years of suspicion and near war, peace had finally come. "Your Admiral Perry still looks uncomfortable around our warriors," Kirish observed, her scales showing amusement. John smiled. "He'll adapt. We all will." He noticed something strange in the crowd below. A human scientist was deep in conversation with a Voraxian warrior. They stood closer than necessary, their body language suggesting mutual interest. "We might not be the only human Voraxian pair for long," John said, nodding toward them. Kirish followed his gaze. "Good. The future needs more bridges between our worlds." She turned to face him, towering above him as always, but now the difference seemed natural. From a compartment in her armor, she removed a small object wrapped in ceremonial cloth. "I had this made for you," she said, unwrapping a beautifully crafted spear. It was smaller than a traditional Voraxian weapon, perfectly balanced for human hands. The shaft was etched with symbols from both their cultures. "It is lighter, but no less strong," she said, "like the bond between us." John took the spear, feeling its perfect balance. He thought about how a single moment, catching something thrown at him instead of dodging, had changed not just his life, but the course of 2 civilizations. "Sometimes the most unlikely connections turn out to be the most important," he said. Kirish's scales brightened to their most vivid blue. "In this, human, We completely agree. The Varaxian ship moved quickly through space, its engines humming with power. John stood on the bridge beside Kirish, watching the stars blur past. After a week working together, the joint human-Varaxian team had formed an uneasy alliance. "We're approaching the attack site," reported the Varaxian pilot. On the main screen, a small space station came into view. Parts of it were damaged, with metal torn open to the vacuum of space. "That's not weapon damage I recognize," Olivia said, studying the images. Kirish nodded. "Nor I. These are not Varaxian weapons." The ship docked with the undamaged part of the station. John, Karash, Olivia, and 2 Varaxian warriors entered carefully, wearing spacesuits. The gravity was off, so they floated through the corridors. "Life support is still working in the central section," Alan reported from the ship. "But be careful." They made their way to the command center. The doors were forced open from the outside. Inside, they found clear signs of a fight. The crew was taken, Kirish said, examining marks on the floor. "Dragged away." John found a data storage unit that was still working. "Kate, can you access this remotely?" "Working on it," Kate's voice came through his helmet. "I've got something." A partial recording. The station's screen flickered to life. It showed the command center, with the human crew working normally. Then alarms sounded. The doors burst open, and tall figures entered, wearing dark armor that covered their bodies completely. "Those aren't Varaxians," John said. "Carven," Kirish growled. "I recognize their armor." The recording showed the Carven attacking the crew, taking them prisoner rather than killing them. "They wanted captives," Olivia said. "But why?" The final moments of the recording showed a Carven commander addressing someone off-screen. The translator struggled with the language, but managed a partial translation. "Phase 1 complete. The humans will blame Varaxians for this attack. Preparations for the main assault proceed as planned." The recording ended there. "They're trying to start a war between us," John said. Kirish's scales darkened with anger. "They have done the same to our outpost. We found Carven weapons designed to look like human technology." Back on the Varaxian ship, they shared their findings with both Earth Command and the Varaxian High Command. The evidence was clear. The Carven had been working for years to push humans and Varaxians into conflict. But why? Admiral Perry asked over the communication link. "What do they gain?" Alan pulled up a star chart. "The Carven Empire borders both our territories. If we fight each other, we weaken ourselves. They could easily take over afterward." The Varaxian High Commander, a massive warrior with battle-scarred scales, spoke next. "We have reports of Carven fleet movements. They prepare for a major attack." John looked at Karash. Their strange bond, formed by an ancient ritual, now seemed like the only thing preventing war between their species. "We need to formalize our alliance," John said. "Not just between Kirish and me, but between all humans and Varaxians." Kirish nodded. "The bond ceremony. If we complete it with representatives from both governments present, it would create a formal alliance under our oldest laws." Some of the Varaxian commanders objected, their scales flashing with colors the translator identified as outrage and disgust. "Join with humans," one said. "They are weak." Kirish fixed him with a cold stare. "This human caught my war spear. Would you like to test his weakness yourself?" The commander backed down. Admiral Perry looked uncomfortable. "Captain Mason, are you sure about this? The cultural implications." "With respect, sir," John interrupted, "we don't have time for lengthy diplomatic processes. The Carven are moving now." John turned to Kirish, suddenly aware that this political alliance had become something more to him. Her alien features, once so strange, now held a familiarity and beauty he hadn't expected to find. "I'm ready if you are," he said quietly. Kirish's scales brightened to the vivid blue that John now knew indicated pleasure or happiness. "Then let us complete what we began, John Mason. Let us show both our peoples what can be achieved when we stand together. Earth Command was not happy. John sat in the small communication room, facing the angry face of Admiral Perry on the screen. Captain Mason, you were sent to negotiate border rights, not get engaged to an alien warlord, the Admiral shouted. John kept his face neutral. Sir, I understand this is unexpected, but the situation has actually improved our position. Improved. The entire diplomatic corps is in chaos. We have no protocol for this kind of entanglement. Olivia stood by the door, trying not to smile. Kate was busy taking notes, while Alan worked on a cultural translation document to help explain the bond to Earth officials. Admiral, John said carefully, War Captain Kirish is not just any Voraxian. She's the daughter of the ruling clan. This connection gives us direct access to their leadership. The Admiral's face reddened. And you believe her motives are genuine. This could be a trap. John thought about his conversations with Kirish over the past 2 days. I do believe her, sir, and the evidence supports her claim. The Voraxian military leaders who were pushing for war now can't move against us without violating their own sacred laws. When the call finally ended, John sighed and leaned back in his chair. That went better than expected, Olivia said, finally letting her smile show. Alan looked up from his work. Captain, I've been studying Kirish's clan records. She's been secretly advocating for alliance with humans for over a year. Most of her clan oppose her. So this wasn't just a sudden decision, John said. Kate handed him a data tablet. There's more. I've been analyzing communication patterns between Voraxian outposts. Evidence suggests a third species has been manipulating both humans and Voraxians, pushing us toward conflict. John scrolled through her findings. The Carven. I thought they were just traders. Apparently not, Kate said. They would benefit if our species destroyed each other. A knock at the door interrupted them. A Voraxian guard entered and bowed slightly to John. Captain Mason, War Captain Kirish, requests your presence in the training arena. John found Kirish, teaching a group of young Voraxian warriors. They moved through combat forms with their training spears. All activity stopped when John entered. My bonded approaches, Kirish announced formally. The young warriors bowed to John, though some did so stiffly. You're teaching them? John asked when the students resumed their practice. Yes. The next generation must understand humans better. Kirish handed John a training spear, and you must learn our ways as well. John took the spear awkwardly. It was lighter than her war spear, but still heavy in the planet's gravity. I'm not sure I'll be much good at this, he admitted. Kirish's scales brightened with amusement. You caught my war spear. These young ones now look at you with respect. It would be good to show them why. For the next hour, Kirish taught John the basic forms of Voraxian combat. His muscles screamed with the effort, but he refused to quit. The young warriors watched closely, their initial disdain gradually changing to interest. Your form improves, Kirish said as they finished. You learn quickly for a human. John noticed that other Voraxians had gathered to watch. Some nodded with apparent approval. Political support is growing for our bond, Kirish said quietly as they left the arena. But a faction led by Commander Zextar still works to declare the challenge invalid. Can they do that? John asked. They will try, but there is little time for politics now. Kirish showed him a communication device with Voraxian symbols flashing red. A border outpost has gone silent. Something approaches. John's own communicator beeped. It was Olivia. Captain, we just got word from Earth. One of our research stations near the Talon Nebula has been attacked. Not by Voraxians. John looked at Kirish, seeing his own concern mirrored in her alien face. The Carven? He asked. Perhaps. Kirish's scales darkened. We should investigate together. Show both our peoples the value of our alliance. John nodded. Their strange bond, born of an ancient ritual, might now be exactly what both their species needed to face a greater threat. "I'll get my team ready," he said. "Chose me," John repeated, still holding the heavy spear. "What do you mean?" Before Kirish could answer, the Varaxian High Command surrounded them. They spoke rapidly in their native language, their scales changing colors with emotion. The translator in John's ear couldn't keep up with all the voices. Commander Zexstar pushed to the front. "This cannot stand. A human cannot be bound to a war captain. It violates our traditions." The elder who had performed the ritual raised his hands for silence. "The ancient law is clear. When a warrior's challenge spear is caught, the sacred bond is formed. There are no exceptions." More arguing broke out. John looked to his team for help. Alan was frantically searching through his data tablet. "Captain, according to their laws, you and Kirish are now. Well, the closest human term would be engaged to be married." "What?" John nearly dropped the spear. Olivia stepped closer, her hand near her weapon. "Sir, Earth Command is demanding an explanation. This wasn't part of our mission parameters." John felt like the gravity had just doubled. He turned to Kirish, who stood calmly amid the chaos. "You knew this would happen," he said. "It wasn't a question." Kirish nodded. "I did." John handed the spear to Alan and stepped closer to Kirish, lowering his voice. "Why? Why choose me for this?" The Varaxian warriors gave them space, though they continued to argue among themselves. "Walk with me," Kirish said, gesturing to a side exit from the arena. John hesitated, then nodded to his team. "I'll be fine. Try to calm Earth Command." He followed Kirish through stone corridors until they reached a small garden. Strange plants grew in patterns around a pool of glowing water. The gravity seemed slightly less crushing here. "I have studied humans for 3 years," Kirish said, turning to face him. "Your adaptability, your diplomacy, your strange mix of weakness and strength. Most Varaxians see only your physical limitations. I see more. That doesn't explain why you'd bind yourself to me through some ancient ritual," John said. Kirish's scales shifted to a deeper blue. "I needed to ensure peace between our species. This was the most efficient path." "Efficient?" John couldn't hide his disbelief. "You've created a diplomatic crisis." "No," Kirish replied calmly. "I have prevented one. By binding myself to you, I have made it impossible for the war faction to attack Earth. Our laws forbid action against bonded clans." John stared at her. "This was political." "Partly," she admitted. "But I had choices in how to achieve my goal. I chose you specifically, John Mason." She stepped closer, and John resisted the urge to step back. She towered over him, her alien features impossible to read. "I calculated the exact force needed for you to catch my spear," she said, "based on human muscle density, reaction time, and your personal military records. The catch was difficult, but not impossible." "You engineered this whole thing," John said, understanding dawning. "But why me?" "You showed respect for our ways without submission. You adapted to our gravity faster than the others. You saw me as a person, not just an alien threat." Her voice softened. "And you have kind eyes." John didn't know how to respond to that. What happens now? Now, many things change. Kirish looked up at the 3 sons. "You should know I am not just any warrior. My clan leads the dominant faction on Vorax. As my bonded, you gain significant political power." John ran a hand through his hair. "Earth Command is going to have a fit. Your superiors will adapt, as you have." Kirish made the sound that translated as laughter. "They have little choice. The bond is formed." John looked at the alien warrior who had just turned his life upside down. She was calculating, strategic, and completely unpredictable. "I don't know whether to be impressed or terrified," he admitted. Kirish's scales brightened. "Both are acceptable reactions. We have time to figure out the rest." From the arena came the sound of continued arguments. Earth Command would be demanding explanations. The Varaxian military would be plotting responses. But here, in this strange garden, John felt something unexpected, possibility. "I guess we do," he said finally. "But next time you plan to upend interplanetary relations, maybe give me a heads up first." Kirish tilted her head. Where would be the challenge in that? The sacred arena looked different in the early morning light. The stands were packed with Voraxians, their scales shimmering as they moved. The entire Voraxian High Command sat in a special section, their elaborate armor marking their importance. John stood in the center of the arena, trying to stay calm. He had spent the night studying Voraxian throwing techniques and practicing his stance. A higher gravity made every movement difficult. "This is suicide," Olivia had told him earlier. "Their spears move faster than our eyes can track." But John had made his decision. Now he waited as ritual fires burned around the arena's edge. Kate rushed up to him, her face worried. "Captain, I found something in the old records. This challenge, it has more meaning than we thought." "What do you mean?" John asked, stretching his arms. "It's not just about respect. The War Spear Challenge is an ancient mating ritual," she said quickly. "Rarely invoked now, but still legally binding in their culture." John froze. "Mating ritual? Are you sure?" "Positive. When a Voraxian warrior wants to choose a mate from another clan, they issue this challenge. If their chosen can catch the spear, it proves they're worthy." Kate looked around nervously. "No one's told us everything about what happens if you succeed." Before John could ask more questions, a horn sounded. The crowd fell silent as Kirish entered the arena. She wore ceremonial battle armor that left her arms bare, showing intricate patterns on her blue scales. Her head was adorned with a metal crest that caught the light of the rising suns. In her hand, she carried her war spear, now glowing with energy. John had never seen anything so alien yet so beautiful. Kirish approached, stopping 10 feet away. "Captain Mason, are you prepared for the challenge?" John nodded, his mouth dry. "I am." A Voraxian elder stepped between them, speaking in their native language. The translator in John's ear struggled to keep up with the formal, ancient words. "A test of worth, binding in the eyes of ancestors, honor of both houses." John caught Kate's eye. She looked increasingly worried as the elder spoke. Kirish lifted her spear, testing its weight. "You understand that no human has ever caught a Voraxian war spear?" "I do," John replied. "And still you accept?" "I do." Something like approval flickered in her eyes. "Then prepare yourself, John Mason of Earth." The elder stepped back. The crowd went completely silent. Kirish moved with fluid grace, her body turning in the traditional wind-up. John planted his feet, remembering what Alan had taught him about Voraxian throwing angles. He bent his knees slightly, compensating for the gravity. Time seemed to slow. Kirish's arm moved forward, her body a perfect line of motion. The spear left her hand. John saw it coming, a blur of metal and energy, faster than seemed possible. His body reacted on instinct, hands moving to the precise spot where the spear would pass. The impact nearly knocked him over. Pain shot through his palms as the spear's weight and momentum hit him. His feet slid backward several feet, digging furrows in the arena floor, but somehow, impossibly, the spear stayed in his hands. He had caught it. For several heartbeats, no one moved. The silence was complete. Every Voraxian stared in disbelief. John looked up from the spear in his hands to find Kirish watching him. Unlike the others, she didn't seem surprised. Instead, her scales had brightened to a vivid blue that almost glowed. Then chaos erupted. The Voraxian High Command rose to their feet, shouting in their native language. The elder who had performed the ritual looked between John and Kirish, making formal gestures with his hands. Alan pushed through the guards to reach John's side. "Captain, do you realize what you've done? According to their law, you and Kirish are no." Kirish approached, silencing Alan with a look. She stood before John, towering over him, her vertical pupils fixed on his face. "John Mason," she said, her voice carrying across the now quiet arena. You have caught my war spear. No outsider has ever done this. John held the spear awkwardly, unsure of the proper response. I'm adaptable. For the first time, Kirish made a sound that the translator identified as laughter. Yes, that is why I chose you. The negotiations were not going well. John sat at the large stone table, trying to keep his expression neutral. The Varaxian representatives had spent 3 hours making increasingly unreasonable demands. The Talon Nebula has been neutral territory for 5 years, John said, keeping his voice calm. We cannot simply abandon our research stations there. Commander Zexstar leaned forward, his scales darkening with what John now recognized as irritation. The nebula belongs to those strong enough to hold it. Your presence there is an insult to Varaxian honor. John glanced at his team. Kate was typing notes rapidly, while Olivia stood guard by the door. Ellen gave him a subtle nod, confirming what John already suspected. The Varaxians were deliberately provoking them. Perhaps we should take a short break, John suggested. Humans, scoffed one of the Varaxian officials. Always needing rest. Your weakness is why you don't deserve the border territories. Before John could respond, the massive doors to the chamber swung open. The Varaxians immediately stood at attention, their postures stiffening. War Captain Kirish strode into the room, her blue scales gleaming under the lights. She wore formal armor today, each piece etched with symbols of past victories. The other Varaxians, even Commander Zexstar, lowered their heads slightly as she passed. This negotiation lacks honor, she said simply, stopping at the head of the table. Zexstar's scales flickered with patterns that the translator didn't catch. War Captain, this is a diplomatic matter. A diplomatic matter being handled poorly, she interrupted. I have reviewed the reports. These humans have honored the previous agreements, yet you push them toward conflict. John watched the exchange carefully. There was tension here he didn't fully understand. Kirish turned her gaze to John. Captain Mason, do humans still practice the ancient custom of personal challenge to settle disputes? Helen started to speak, but John raised a hand to stop him. Some human cultures have such traditions, yes. Kirish's mouth moved in what might have been a Varaxian smile. Then I offer a challenge in the old way, as is my right as war captain. The room went completely silent. Even the other Varaxians seemed surprised. What kind of challenge? John asked. Kirish lifted her ceremonial spear. It was longer than the others John had seen, with glowing blue lines running along its shaft. Simple. I will throw my war spear at full strength. If a representative of Earth can catch it, we will negotiate fairly. If not, Earth will concede to all Varaxian demands. The Varaxian officials erupted in sounds the translator couldn't process fast enough. John caught words like impossible and sacred tradition. Kate leaned toward John. Captain, I don't think we should. What's the significance of this challenge? John asked Alan quietly. The xenanthropologist looked pale. It's an ancient tradition, rarely used now. No non-Varaxian has ever caught a war spear. The weight and velocity make it physically impossible for most species, especially in this gravity. Olivia moved closer to the group. Sir, with respect, this is crazy. Their spears can punch through metal targets. John looked back at Kirish, who waited patiently for his answer. Her eyes held something he couldn't read. Expectation, perhaps, or hope. If I refuse, John asked her. Then you prove what many say, that humans hide behind words because they lack strength, she replied. The negotiations will continue, but you will have lost face. Commander Zexstar seemed to have recovered from his surprise. War Captain, this is highly irregular. It is my right, she said firmly. The ancient laws still stand. John knew he was missing something important. This challenge meant more than Kirish was saying, but he also knew that diplomatic failure was not an option. Earth needed this alliance. I accept your challenge, John said, standing up despite the crushing gravity. I will represent Earth. A murmur ran through the Varaxian officials. Kirish's expression didn't change, but John thought he saw her scales brighten slightly. "The challenge will take place at first light tomorrow," she announced, "in the sacred arena." As she left the room, John's team gathered around him. "Captain," Alan whispered urgently, "do you have any idea what you've just agreed to?" The welcome ceremony took place in a massive stone arena. Hundreds of Voraxians filled the seats, their scales glittering in the fading light of the three suns. John and his team sat in a special box near the center, clearly marked as outsiders. "This isn't just a welcome," whispered Dr. Alan Wright. "It's a show of force." John nodded. The gravity still pulled at his muscles. He had taken medicine to help, but his body felt heavy. "Tell me what we need to know." Alan leaned closer. "Voraxian society ranks everyone by combat skill. Everything, politics, marriage, property, depends on your fighting rank." Below them, a group of Voraxian warriors entered the arena. They moved with grace despite their size, forming perfect lines. "Those markings on their armor show clan and rank," Alan continued. "See the gold patterns. Higher rank means more gold." Olivia pointed subtly. "Look who's leading them." War Captain Kirish stood at the front, her blue scales standing out among the mostly green warriors. Her armor had the most gold patterns John had seen on any Voraxian. "She must be near the top of their hierarchy," Kate said. A loud horn sounded. The warriors spread out and began to demonstrate their fighting skills. They moved faster than seemed possible for their size, jumping and striking with their spears. John watched closely as Kirish moved through a series of attacks. Her spear hummed with energy as she spun it around her body. She moved differently than the others, more fluid, more controlled. "The spears," Alan explained, "are their signature weapons. They're made of a special metal that interacts with the magnetic field of the planet. In the hands of a skilled warrior, they're nearly impossible to block or avoid." As the demonstration continued, the warriors began to spar with each other. The matches were intense but short, ending when one warrior scored a touch against the other. No one challenged Kirish. "Why is no one fighting her?" John asked. "Probably because no one can beat her," Alan replied. "In their culture, challenging someone much higher in rank only happens during formal advancement trials." The demonstration ended with the warriors throwing their spears at targets. Each spear hit with incredible force, some even going through the thick metal targets. The crowd roared with approval. Commander Zextar approached the human delegation after the display. "Now you have seen a small demonstration of Voraxian strength. Tomorrow's negotiations will determine if humans deserve our respect." As Zextar walked away, a younger Voraxian warrior stepped forward. His scales were light green, with very little gold on his armor. "So these are the soft skins who think they can claim the border systems," he said. The translator conveyed his words, but John noticed the device hesitated, suggesting the warrior had used language it was programmed to soften. "We come to find a peaceful solution," John replied carefully. The young warrior made a clicking sound. "Peace is for those who cannot win through strength." He looked at John's team with obvious disdain. "Your kind would break under real Voraxian combat." John felt his team tense beside him. The insult was clear, even through the translator's diplomatic phrasing. "Fighting skill isn't everything," Olivia said, her voice tight. The warrior turned his gaze to her. "Says one who has none." Before anyone could respond, a spear point appeared at the young warrior's throat. Kirish had moved so quickly none of them had seen her approach. "You dishonor yourself, Vreknar," she said, her voice low but carrying in the now quiet arena. "These are invited guests under diplomatic protection." The young warrior's scales flattened against his body. A sign of submission, John guessed. "Forgive me, War Captain," he said, backing away when she lowered her spear. Kirish turned to John, her vertical pupils narrowing slightly. "Captain Mason, I hope tomorrow's discussions prove more productive than today's posturing." She knew his name. John straightened despite the crushing gravity. "I hope so too, War Captain. As she walked away, John noticed many Varaxians watching the exchange with interest. Something important had just happened, but he wasn't sure what. That was unusual, Ellen whispered. Very unusual. She just publicly defended humans. John watched Kirash's retreating form. The question is, why? Captain John Mason wiped sweat from his forehead as he stepped off the shuttle. The air felt thick, heavy with moisture and gravity that pulled at his bones. 3 suns burned in the purple sky of Vorax. Their light cast strange shadows across the landing platform. Everyone feeling okay? John asked, glancing at his team. Lieutenant Olivia Reeves adjusted her uniform and nodded. Her hand rested near her sidearm, eyes scanning the area. All good, Captain. Just heavier than I expected. Dr. Alan Wright stumbled slightly, his scientific equipment hanging awkwardly from his shoulders. The gravity is approximately 1.3 times Earth standard. Our bodies will adjust, but it won't be comfortable. Kate Daniels, their communication specialist, was already fiddling with her translator. The atmospheric composition is affecting our devices. I'm recalibrating now. John took a deep breath. This mission had to succeed. Earth and Vorax had kept an uneasy peace for 5 years. Now border disputes threatened to destroy that peace. Their job was simple on paper: negotiate new terms, prevent war. In reality, nothing about dealing with 7-foot-tall reptilian warriors was simple. The welcoming party approached. 6 Voraxians marched in perfect formation, their scaled bodies gleaming blue and green in the sunlight. Each carried a long metal spear that hummed with energy. Their faces remained still, showing no emotion through their reptilian features. Remember, John whispered to his team, show no weakness. They respect strength above all else. The Voraxians stopped 10 feet away. The leader stepped forward, towering over John. His scales were deep green with gold patterns that marked his high rank. I am Commander Zexstar, the Voraxian said, his voice rumbling through the translator. You are permitted on Vorax for diplomatic purposes only. Any violation will result in immediate consequences. John stood straight despite the crushing gravity. I am Captain John Mason of Earth's Diplomatic Corps. We come with respect and hope for productive discussions. The Voraxian's eyes narrowed, vertical pupils contracting in the bright light. We shall see, human. As the formal greetings continued, John noticed another Voraxian watching from a distance. Unlike the others, this one's scales shone cobalt blue, rare among their kind. She was taller than her companions, her posture perfect even by Voraxian standards. Her armor was more elaborate, with symbols John didn't recognize. Who is that? John whispered to Alan. The xenanthropologist followed his gaze and paled slightly. That's War Captain Kirash, one of their elite warriors and daughter of the ruling clan's leader. Her combat record is extensive. John couldn't look away. There was something in the way she watched him, not with the usual Voraxian contempt, but with curiosity. She carried a spear unlike the others, decorated with what looked like battle trophies. Commander Zexstar noticed John's attention and made a guttural sound that the translator didn't catch. You notice our war captain, he said. She insisted on observing your arrival. Many of our kind believe humans too weak to even survive our atmosphere. John felt his team tense at the insult. He kept his voice level. We're adaptable. So you claim, Zexstar replied. You will be escorted to your quarters. The formal welcome ceremony begins in 3 hours. There you will witness true Voraxian strength. As the team followed their escorts, John felt Kirash's eyes still on him. When he glanced back, she hadn't moved. Her posture remained perfect, her gaze intense. For just a moment, he thought he saw her head tilt slightly. An evaluation, perhaps, or a challenge. Captain, Olivia whispered, I don't like this. They're treating us like we're already defeated. John nodded, because that's what they expect. We'll just have to show them otherwise. The heavy doors of the Voraxian diplomatic complex opened before them, revealing dark corridors built for beings much larger than humans. As they entered, John couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far more complicated than border negotiations. Behind them, War Captain Kirish finally moved, following at a distance.